The House of Representatives is set to take up a vote this week on the Equality Act. It would ban discrimination against people based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. President Biden supports the bill, writing in a statement last week in part, quote, "The Equality Act provides long overdue federal civil rights protections on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, locking in critical safeguards in our housing, education, public services, and lending systems, and codifying the courage and resilience of the LGBTQ+ movement into enduring law." Joining us now is Emilie Kao, director of the DeVos Center for Religion and Civil Society at the Heritage Foundation. Emilie, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Now, first off, I want to get your take on the Equality Act. What concerns do you have about it, in particular, when it comes to our children and their education?
Well, thank you so much. Some of our concerns about children revolve around the politicization of education. One of the main things that we are hearing from parents around the country is that they don't want their children to be taught this destructive gender ideology. But that is exactly what the Equality Act could lead to in all 50 states. Because the Equality Act addresses the 1964 Civil Rights Act and modifies it, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 led to federal courts directing schools to adopt Black history curriculum. The same thing could happen if the Equality Act were to pass. Federal courts could say to schools that they have to adopt curriculum with this destructive gender ideology and a politicized viewpoint about sexual orientation. And that would be very dangerous for children across the country.
Well, I know the Heritage Foundation is part of an initiative called The Promise to America's Children. Tell us more about that and its purpose.
Yes, the Promise to America's Children is a nationwide movement of parents and lawmakers who are coming together to protect children's minds, bodies, and their relationships with their families. The Promise lays out 10 principles of how children can be protected from the sexualization that we see in our culture, but also the sexualization that we see coming from laws and policies like the Equality Act. And it has received tremendous support from parents across the country. Lawmakers are endorsing it, and lawmakers are also introducing good bills to protect children. And that's one of the things that the Promise highlights.
I know the group mentions on the website that school curriculum is filled with graphic information about things like abortion, sex, and gender identity. Can you talk more about that and what you think will happen if the Equality Act is passed?
So I think a lot of parents are waking up to the problem that is happening in our schools with comprehensive sexuality education that promotes abortion, that introduces graphic information about sex, that promotes consent to children who cannot consent to sex, and that promotes gender ideology and sexual orientation. And parents are not okay with this. They want to stand up against it, and they are fighting it at the state and local level. But as I said, the Federal Equality Act could override all of those efforts. And that's why parents are joining on to the Promise.
And Emilie, we have about a minute left, but quickly, tell us what Promise to America's Children, is doing really to protect children and what we as parents can do as well.
So the Promise is uniting parents and lawmakers. We're providing information to parents about how they can fight back at every level, whether it's the local school board or it's the state legislature or it's Congress. And we're also working with lawmakers to help highlight the good bills that they are enacting that hopefully will pass, that protect children's minds, bodies, and the relationships with their parents.
Emilie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Emilie Kao with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the Heritage Foundation's YouTube channel. With more than 500,000 members, we are the nation's largest conservative research and education institution. We believe the principles and ideas of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing. Please help us further our mission by subscribing to this channel and sharing our videos with your family and friends.